Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson where I'm going to talk about elections. This should be a good topic. I feel like I should have done this topic a week ago, but since the election in the United States isn't quite over yet, it's probably still a good topic to do. So in this lesson, I will talk about elections. I will talk about the people who run for office, and I will talk about some of the words and phrases you would use to talk about an election. By the way, I do have to say, Samuel Chiodi in the chat earlier was laughing because my short English lesson today was about enough already, or enough is enough in terms of elections. Basically, I was saying I'm tired of hearing about elections, and then here I am doing an English lesson about elections. So anyways, we should get started soon. I do want to say a couple of things. I generally avoid politics, religion, sex in my lessons. Those are considered hot topics. So there are things I just don't do lessons on. So doing a lesson on elections, I would really appreciate it if in the chat people remain calm. People have civil conversations. Those are polite conversations. I know we have an election in the United States that's not quite over. I know that there are many different systems of government in the world, and we can't always agree on what is the best way for us to run each other's countries, or the best way for us to run our countries. So I would love it if the chat was in English. I'm just asking Todd and Dave to be extra cautious about anyone who starts to argue. This isn't the place to debate whether you're correct or not in terms of who you think will win or which system of government you think is the best. So hopefully that's okay with you. A couple of other things. If you do have a question on the topic of elections, please use the forum that Todd and Dave will link. I changed it so it says if you have a question about the topic elections, please use this link to ask it. The last couple of weeks, I've started to get a few more questions that are not on topic. So on Friday, I really like to keep the lesson on topic. Just doing a quick audio check. I do have to say to some of you, you will notice that we are 1 hour different today than we normally are for some of you. In Canada, it is the same time because we changed our clocks last weekend because we observe daylight savings time. So every fall, we turn our clocks back an hour. And every spring, we turn our clocks forward an hour. And it kind of messes up the time of the live stream. So anyways, great to see all of you here. Big shout out to Brent from American English with This Guy. Always great to see him in the chat as well. I would call Brent my American friend or my American cousin. He's not actually my cousin though, but I would refer to him that way. I think I've talked enough. We should get started. So let's get started on this lesson about elections. An election is a process where people choose someone to be a leader. An election doesn't just need to happen in a country. In fact, in our school, we have elections every year for students' council. So an election can be local, an election can be in a school, an election can be in an organization, or as many of you are familiar with, an election can be in a country. Canada has an election, I think, every 5 years. The United States has an election every 4 years. But again, you can have big and small elections. It's simply a process whereby people in a country or organization each give one vote and decide who they want their leader to be. If you work in a large factory that has a union, you will often have elections every year to elect the leaders of that union as well. So an election does not have to simply be about government. An election is any time an organization votes to decide who will be in charge or who will be a leader. And so let's talk about vote. Vote can be a verb and vote can be a noun. When it is a verb, it's the verb to vote. So a few years ago, I voted in the Canadian election. The next time there is an election, I will vote in the election. Jen and I will go vote. Okay, so it is a verb, and the verb indicates that you are going to go and indicate who you want to be your next leader. We also use vote as a noun. You can say that there is a vote, and there's kind of two meanings here. You could say we need to have a vote. So that means you want to go through the process of electing someone, okay? So at school, we could say, okay, in this class, we need to choose someone to be the class leader. Let's have a vote. In that, everyone gets a vote. So you see how it's a noun, but it has two slightly different meanings. As a verb, it's the action of voting. As a noun, it describes the process. So we had a vote and we voted yesterday. We had a vote and so won the election. Or you could say each person has one vote. So it indicates your own ability to vote. I hope I explained that fairly well. I think I did. I'm not sure. As I listened to it in my head, I hope it was clear for you. And the person who does the voting is a voter. Okay, so there are many voters in an election. Not every voter, though, actually goes and votes. Okay, that's not true. If you vote, you're a voter. What are you if you don't vote? Did you know that in many elections, not everyone votes? In Canada, we don't have a great turnout rate for our elections. Not everyone comes to vote. But if you vote, you are a voter. You are someone who voted. Should I use all those words in one sentence? A voter is someone who votes when there is a vote to choose the next prime minister. Did I get that right? A voter is someone who votes when there is a vote to choose the next prime minister. Yeah, that was a totally correct sentence, but it sounds kind of strange. Generally, votes when they are for leaders in government are done in a democracy. A democracy is a form of government where the people elect all of the officials who run the country. Generally, in a democracy, there are time frames. So you will have elections every so many years. And at that election, you will choose who your next mayor will be, who your next leader of your province or state will be, and who your next president or prime minister. There are a number of names for leaders. But democracies aren't the only type of government that have elections. There can be elections big and small in many other forms of government as well. But generally, when people think elections, when they think about voting, they're generally talking about countries that have democracy as their form of government. So here's Justin Trudeau. Anyone who likes to be elected or seeks to be elected, we call a politician. A politician is the name for the job that a person does when they are in politics. So anyone who wants to be mayor or premier or prime minister or president, anyone who hopes that everyone will vote for them so they can be in power, we would call a politician. So Justin Trudeau is our leader in Canada. He is the prime minister. He is a politician. Let me see here. We'll do one more. A candidate is the person who is seeking to be elected. Okay. So when you have an election, you usually have 2 or 3 candidates. In Canada, there's usually 3 candidates that are running in the election. They're not actually running, but we use the word running when someone is in an election. Just one sec. Excuse me, that wasn't very kind. But there's usually one candidate for each political party. And I think that's the next one. So in an election, you are voting for a person, but that person is part of a political party. Okay. In Canada, we have 3 main political parties. We have the Liberal Party of Canada, the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, and the NDP, which is the National Democratic Party of Canada. But we just call them the NDP. Those are the 3. I hope I got that right. Maybe David Todd should fact check that about NDP. I'm pretty sure it's the National Democratic Party. Maybe we should check that. So we have the Liberal, the PC, and the NDP. In the United States, obviously, there is the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. So a little bit different. Let's switch, though, and look at a few questions. Let me get my questions up on the screen. As I'm doing that, I do want to say once again, for those of you joining us, yes, it might be 1 hour different for you today. because we celebrate daylight savings time. We observe daylight savings time in Canada. We don't have a big party. We don't celebrate daylight savings time. We observe it. First question is from, let's see here. Let me get the question actually on the screen. Is from Renata. Hi, Renata. I do want to say hi to the 394 people watching. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining this English lesson. Renata says, hello, Bob. Do you say I'm going to mail it in to mean I'm going to vote in Canada? In Brazil, there's a machine in which we type some numbers. Thanks, sir. So there's a couple of different ways to vote. You can go and vote in person, or you can mail in your vote. It's two completely different ways of voting. When you go and vote in person, sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's a machine, but you go to a local polling station and you vote. When you mail in your vote, you usually get a vote in the mail. You fill it in, you do everything official, and you mail it back. So in Canada, you can vote both ways. Next question. Let's see here. Ricardo says, hi, Bob. The USA politics battle is sharp. Is there this kind of challenge in Canada? There are right and left parties in your country. So Canada is unique in the sense that we have three political parties. We have a conservative party, we have a liberal party, which you would say are kind of right of center and left of center. And then we have the NDP, which are also a little bit left of center. In that, because we have, Todd says it's the new Democratic Party. Thanks, Todd. Because we have three parties, it makes things, I think, a little more calm, because it's not simply a choice between two, which can really divide people. It's a choice between three, which I think always leads to good discussion. I think it's just my personal opinion. But yes, in Canada, because we have three main political parties, things work a little differently than the United States. Next question, Essam from Israel. Good morning, Teacher Bob. How are you? What's the difference between nominee and candidate, and between polls and elections? So just give me a sec here. Good. So a nominee, so when a political party needs a new leader, people will nominate people to be the leader. And once they have a number of people nominated, they will vote within their party to elect a new leader. Okay. So I would say nominee is someone nominated. When they're accepted as a nominee, they probably become a candidate. And when they are elected, they become the leader. So there's probably just a slight difference. The difference between polls and election, polls are simply, well, there's a couple ways to use polls, but polls are just surveys they do to see what people are thinking. An election is an official government-run process to choose a new leader, or it could just be in a business or a school as well. Let's get to the next question here. Ruslan says, hello, Teacher Bob. How are you today? If you were the president, what kind of law would you pass to improve people's lives? I don't know. Is there a way to make people read more books? There probably isn't. I am a big believer in that reading is a good way to enhance your mind. And I think reading makes you a better citizen. And I don't mean just reading the news on the internet. I think reading books from different countries and expanding your mind is the best way to improve yourself. So I don't think this would work, but if I was president, I would want to make a law where people are required to read more. Hey, Brent, have a good day at school. I see Brent in the chat saying he's got to get going. Brent is from American English with this guy. Do check out his channel every once in a while. And Brent, I wish your country all the best as you continue to count ballots and sort things out down there. Have a great day teaching. Let's see here. Next question from Mary the Iranian. Morning, Teacher Bob. Please make a couple sentences with inaugurate and coalition. Your examples will help me. Thanks a million. So when you are inaugurated, it means that you are officially put into the office of whatever leader you are becoming. So an inauguration is kind of, there's a speech and there's a swearing in where you take an oath of office. An inauguration is where you are officially put into office. A coalition is simply different groups of people that work together for the same cause. We often see coalitions between countries. If there were a number of countries that wanted to change fishing rights in the Atlantic, there might be a coalition of countries that works together to do that. But yes, there you go. Sorry, I'm just making sure of one thing. Yes, so sorry, I'm losing track of what. Sorry, I laugh at myself too much, don't I? Let's see here. Athanasios has the next question. We'll get back to the lesson in a moment, everybody. Hey, Teacher Bob, how are you today? I'm good, Athanasios. I hope you are well as well. Do you have the same system like in the States? Do you have a governor for each state? Thank you in advance. So we have a slightly different system in Canada. First of all, we have provinces. The leader of a province is the premier of the province. In Ontario, it's Premier Ford. We have a prime minister instead of a president. Our prime minister in Canada is Justin Trudeau. And our elections work a little bit differently. We don't vote directly for our leader. We vote for the person in our area, which is called a riding. If that person gets in, that counts as one vote towards the main leader getting in. So I don't vote for Justin Trudeau. If I wanted Justin Trudeau to win the next election, I would vote for the local Liberal Party candidate in my area. And that vote counts double. It counts for that person and the person up the chain. Let's see. Mahmood says, hi, boss. Could you just give us a brief whim who you support in this election and why? You're probably talking about the US election. Now, here's something very cool, I think, and interesting about Canadians. We are very reserved and patient and polite when it comes to the US election. We don't usually say who we think should win publicly. We usually wait patiently. The reason we do that is because the United States is our largest trading partner. They are our neighbor to the south. It's very important that Canada and the United States get along really well. So even our prime minister will not come out and say whether he thinks Biden or Trump should win, because whoever wins the US election, that will be the next president that we will be negotiating with on trade and other relations. So I will not declare who I think should win. All I will say is I hope it goes well as they finish counting votes down there. And I hope the country can remain peaceful while that's happening. Let's see here. Henry from Taiwan. I had a hunch that Teacher Bob would talk about elections this week. I learned the word Sharpiegate in the news. Is Sharpie also used as a marker in Canada? Thank you. Hey, Jen, can you bring me a Sharpie? So, Henry, you'll see in a moment that a Sharpie is a very common thing. Michel says, can you tell us a little bit about how the Canadian election system works? Yeah, so if you're wondering what Sharpies are a type of, well, we call them a marker. So it's something that you write with, and they're permanent. When you write something with a Sharpie, you can't erase it. So yes, we definitely have Sharpies in Canada. So Michel, I kind of talked about it a little bit already. We have provinces instead of states, and our leader of the country is called a prime minister instead of a president. If you're interested in knowing more, that would be a great thing to read up about, I think. Let's see here. Modine says, Mr. Bob, I'm not into politics, but I'm always wondering what would happen if an election is held and the Conservative Party of Canada or other countries still doesn't have a prime minister. So in Canada, the current prime minister doesn't resign until within hours of the new prime minister being inaugurated. We don't really use inaugurated. We swear them into office. So Canada is never without a prime minister. Because even though we elect a prime minister, there's a formal process for the exchange of power. So we never have a situation where we don't have a prime minister. Okay, let's move on with this lesson. Let me see how far I am. When you are in the days before an election, so in the months leading up to an election, there is often a campaign. A campaign is a process where Each candidate goes from city to city, and they do speeches. They try to convince people to vote for them. They shake hands. They go on television. They do interviews on the news. A campaign is, they have advertisements on TV. If you want to talk about enough is enough, I'm tired of we get American television here. So I am tired of American political ads on television, just a little bit. But leading up to an election, you will have a campaign. So each person who wants to be elected will do everything they can to convince people to elect them. They will put ads in the newspaper. They will visit small towns and shake people's hands. They will do everything they can to get elected. They will give speeches. So they will go from city to city, and they will give a speech in each city. They will visit factories. They will visit the downtown of a city. They will just go everywhere they possibly can so that they can give speeches. I think leading up to the Canadian election, they give up to 3 or 4 speeches a day. The candidates, they just really want people to hear them and then vote for them. Sometimes you will have a debate. Debates are when both candidates meet, and in a moderated fashion, that means in a controlled and organized fashion, they will discuss the issues. They will talk about what they will do if they are elected. They will sometimes talk about what the other person will do if it's something they think is bad. But a debate is where each person will talk about basically their plans if elected, what they will do to make that country or organization better. And then we arrive at election day. So election day is the day when you go and vote. It's usually a specific day. In certain countries, it can be a different day every time. In the US, I think it's the same day all the time. But election day is the day where you would actually go to a polling station and you would cast your vote, or you would fill in your ballot. Those mean the same thing, for sure. Election day is an exciting day in Canada because we're allowed to leave work early. That's what I really like about it. We can leave work 1 hour early so that we can go and vote. So that's always fun. And it's fun to watch the results on television that evening. When you go vote in Canada, and I think in the United States as well, you go to a polling station. So even though it's an election and you are voting, we still use the word poll. It's kind of funny because you're not going here to take a poll, you're going here to vote, but it's called a polling station. In Canada, we get a letter in the mail a couple weeks before election day, and it tells us which polling station we need to go to in order to vote. When you get to the polling station, they will give you a ballot. Let me see if I have this in the wrong order. Let me go to ballot. They'll give you a ballot. The ballot will have the names of everyone on it that you can vote for. You will take the ballot to a voting booth. In Canada, they look exactly like this. They're just these little cardboard things that you go and sit behind, and you sit at the voting booth and you fill in your ballot. Usually the ballot has little circles beside each name. You fill in the ballot, and then when you're done, you put the ballot in a ballot box. This is exactly what a ballot box looks like in Canada. I'm going to go through that one more time. When you go to vote, you go to a polling station, you fill out a ballot, you go into a voting booth in order to do it because you want it to be private. You don't want anyone to see who you vote for. So you go to a voting booth. And once that's done, you put your ballot into a ballot box, which is an official box that looks like this. In Canada, they look like this. I think that's the whole process, except there's also mail-in ballots. So you can vote by mailing your ballot in. You can also have absentee ballots. In Canada, these are very similar, okay? In order to vote by mail, you need to register to vote by mail early, and then they will send you the official documents. A mail-in ballot and an absentee ballot are pretty much the same thing. It's simply voting early and then mailing your ballot in instead of putting it into the ballot box. Where am I here? Sorry, I know I had my slides in the wrong order. That happens sometimes. On voting day, they hope for really good voting turnout. Voter turnout. They hope for really good voter turnout. Not everyone always votes in an election. In fact, sometimes only 50, 60, or 70% of the population. Sometimes we call it the electorate. Sometimes only 50, 60, or 70% of the people come out and vote. I don't think there has been an election where close to 100% of the population of a country has voted. So it's always good to have good voter turnout. The more people come out to vote, the more accurate the results are for that election. So it's always nice to have really good voter turnout. I'm just going to flip through these. Give me one sec. Sometimes at the polling station, when you are done voting, on your way out, there will be people who are conducting an exit poll. An exit poll is where they just say, hey, would you like to answer a few questions? We're just doing a poll. And they're questions about, will you tell us are you male, female, your age, etc. They might even ask who you voted for, although I'm not sure that's 100% legal all the time. They will certainly ask you things like, did you vote because you want the leader to improve the economy? Did you vote for the person you voted for because you want them to improve streets and roads? So they try to ask you a few questions to get a good idea as to why you voted. Hey, we're going to do this a little early this time around. I think this lesson is going well. I'm going to flip to members only chat for 10 minutes. So if you are a member of the channel, you will notice that members only chat is turned on. If you have questions about the election process, or if you want to talk about voting or any of those things, ask in the chat now. I do want to thank all of you who are members of my channel. I just love it that there are so many names in green, and I do thank you from bottom of my heart for supporting my channel. You guys are awesome. So Lolly says, for the French, it's very difficult to understand how the American elections work. Lolly, I've been watching American elections for a very long time, and I still don't always understand how they work. It's easier to understand when it's not close. When there's a clear winner, it's a lot easier to understand. Annette Manzi says, hi Bob, is the word campaign used just for elections? Is it necessary to specify electoral campaign as in French? Yeah, you can campaign for a number of things. But generally, when we're close to an election and you hear the word campaign, you assume it's for it's an electoral campaign or an election campaign. So yes, generally you should specify, but it's usually understood because of the time of year when it is happening. Kim gives me a smiley or a monocle face. Thanks, Kim. Sam the Taiwanese. Hi, Teacher Bob. I am wondering what's your perspective on politicians in general, and do you want to be a politician by any chance? So let me answer the second question first. I do not want to be a politician. Okay, I do not want to be mayor or premier or prime minister. I have no desire. What is my feeling? I think politicians, for the most part, try to do a good job, but I think it's a very difficult job, especially right now. I feel like because of the pandemic, I feel like politicians, it's a very tough job to do right now because you can't make everyone happy and you have to make the best decision. So Sam, no, I don't want to be a politician. I don't know, maybe someday, but it's not like something I think about very often, for sure. Lolly says, haha, thanks, Bob, no problem. Siu Wu says, I wish there was a president I can trust in my country. So that's the challenging thing about elections is sometimes someone gets into office or someone gets into power, and maybe you don't like the same things as them. So it can be challenging when the person you voted for loses. And it can be challenging when someone you don't like wins, but in a democracy, that's just going to happen sometimes. So there's really not a lot you can do about it. Rod says, oh, hi, Rod. Rod, the Brazilian English teacher. By the way, last week I hinted at that there was a surprise coming on Saturday, but I was off by a week. So there might be a surprise. There is a surprise. There's a surprise coming tomorrow. There's a trailer on Rod's channel right now. If you want to go watch a short trailer on Rod, the Brazilian English teacher's channel, you should watch that. Rod and I had a chat, and it might have been recorded. Anyways, Mr. Bob, in Brazil, voting is mandatory. If you don't do so, you're not allowed to do a lot of things, not even get a passport. Oh, I didn't know that. That helps get a lot of people out to the polls if you make it mandatory. Okay, well, it's not mandatory in Canada, but sometimes I wish there was a way to encourage more people to vote, because sometimes people don't vote and then they complain about the person who won. And I think, well, you should have voted. Let's see, Ricardo. Anyways, Rod, thanks again for the interview this past week. I hope lots of people enjoy it. Ricardo says, Bob, what's the length of work the politician in years in Canada? Oh, generally in Canada, someone is in office for usually 5 years, but it can be earlier. We can have it where an election is called early. So actually, our government just avoided that a month ago. But generally, there's an election about every 5 years in Canada. In the US, it's every 4. And then maybe Todd and Dave can fact check that again. Todd or Dave, can you check my Canadian knowledge of elections? I think we have an election every 5 years, federal election. Anyways, we'll find out. Norma says, Rod the Brazilian, here in Uruguay, voting is mandatory too. Interesting. Thanks, Norma. Anuat says, hi, Teacher Bob. What does too close to call mean? Well, I'm actually going to look at that in a little bit. But it means when a race is so close, you can't say who has won. Let's see here. Key Park, hi Bob, how are you? Sorry I'm late. No problem, Key. I know there was a time change that might have affected it. Madi is here. Hi Madi, how are you doing? Let me pull up another question. Let's see here. Igor, I cannot answer this question well, but what's the difference between Democrats and Republicans? So first of all, in the United States, there are two main political parties. There are the Republicans and the Democrats. If you want to know what the difference is between them, you really need to listen to each candidate every time there's an election, because they've slightly changed over the last few hundred years. So I would say read a good Wikipedia page on Democrats versus Republicans. That would be the best way to get that information. Let's see here. Next question is from Igon or Igoni. I have been reading these sentences in the news. Too early to call, too close to call. What does that mean? Thank you. So let's say two people are running and it's a race. And when they run by you, you can't tell who's winning. You would say that's too close to call. When you have an election and people are, and let's say 95% of the votes have been counted, you might say, so-and-so is winning, but it's too early to call. It means they can't say who's going to win yet because they don't have all the information. I'll talk about that a bit later as well. Ario has a great question. Hello, Mr. Bob. My question is, what time would you do a live stream on Saturday? Thank you. So, first of all, sorry to disappoint all of you, but I have decided not to do a live stream tomorrow. My plan is to only do 3 live streams a month. That's a bad way of describing it. One Saturday a month, I am not going to do live streams. I did that about 4 weeks ago as well. Tomorrow, there is no live stream, okay? If there was a live stream, on most Saturdays, the live stream is at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So 2 things there. First of all, no live stream tomorrow. Sorry to disappoint you. But I thought going through this winter, because I'm teaching again, I needed to build a small break into my schedule. So every 4th week, there will be no live stream on Saturday. Let's see here. Dave the Canadian says, yes, you're right. It is 5 years maximum between federal elections. I didn't know that. I always thought it was 4. I think a lot of people think it's 4 because it's 4 in the United States, but I'm pretty sure I remember from my civics class in high school that it was 5. So anyways, I'm going to be reading a lot about elections after this as well. Let's see here. Natalia, how would you rate Canadians regarding the elections? Are they responsible people, or do they think that the right people will win anyway and don't care about it? Well, it's interesting because some people feel like voting doesn't matter, that whether they vote or not, the right person's going to get in or the wrong person's going to get in. Canada is very similar to the United States in that the older you are, the more likely you are to vote. So it's very hard in Canada and the United States to get young people to vote. But I think young people should vote because when they let old people vote, then old people get what they want. So they should really think about the importance of voting. Let's see here. Need to make sure I answer all these questions. Samuel Chen, hi Teacher Bob. It's lucky to have voting rights in a democracy. Watching the US presidential election is like a carnival to me. So a carnival is like a fun fair or a fun circus to go to. And I would agree, Samuel, it's a bit like a carnival. Yeah, I don't want to get into the details of what it's like to live in a democracy because I know some of you don't. But I do appreciate the fact that I can vote for my leaders. Key Park says, this topic is strange for me. We have no election, no vote, no ballot here at all. Yeah, so yeah, I'm just going to continue to say there are many different systems of government. And each of them, I think, has different things that give them strengths and weaknesses. So I do appreciate, though, living in a democracy. Although, as Samuel Chen said, sometimes it's like a carnival. Madi says, hi, Teacher Bob. When is the next Canadian election? I don't actually know, Madi. Like I said, we almost had one just a month ago, but it was avoided. But I think we probably have one. I don't know. Dave and Todd, can you look up when's the next Canadian election? I should have researched this more. Lolly says, who? Samuel Chen says, Pat. Lolly says, hello, Madi. Let's see here. So Nat says, hi, Bob. Nice to see you in a live stream from Audie Tai. Hi, hello, Audie. Madi says, hello. And there we go. Hey, I'm going to go. Give me 1 second here. I'm not going to go. I'm staying. I'm just going to switch the chat back again. So let's do a couple more questions and then we'll get back to the lesson. Rod mentioned this in the chat as well. Good morning, Mr. Bob. How are you today? In Brazil, it's mandatory to vote and we have to go to the polls to do so. In Canada, is it possible to vote by mail? Great Friday. Yeah, you can vote early in Canada. You can vote by mail, especially if you're outside of the country. There are many ways to be able to vote. Daria says, do we need an article before the word president? Like in this sentence, I want to be president. You don't say. So if you say, you're speaking in general. So if I said, I want to be a president, it means maybe I want to be a president of the United States or France or another country. But if you say, I want to be president or I want to be the president, you're talking about the president of your country. Todd says the next Canadian election will take place on or before October 16th, 2023. So we're a ways away. Dave says the last election was October 21st, 2019. So I think the next mandatory one should be 2024. So we have Todd and Dave with different information. It can be confusing to live in Canada. We do care about democracy. We do. Let's see here. Katerina says, hello, Teacher Bob. My question today is, if you were a president, what would you change first in your country? You know, that's a tough question because I do, for the most part, like how Canada is run. There is not a lot I would change. So I'll go back to my previous thing. I would make people read more books. Although you can't really force people to do things, can you? Just let me have a sip of water. We'll get back to the lesson. Here we go. So when you have an election, when it is in process, when it's happening live, you will have sometimes a front runner. That means that person is winning that area. So in the state of Nebraska, this picture is from a couple days ago, you can see that Joe Biden has 55% of the votes and Trump has 45. We would say that Joe Biden is the front runner in that state. It doesn't mean he has won that state. You are only a front runner when the votes still need to be counted and when they need to finish counting the votes, but you are in the lead. If you think about a race where you run, if you are in front of someone during the race, you are the front runner. Okay, it doesn't mean you won because the race isn't over. So in this case, we see that Joe Biden is the front runner in Nebraska whenever this picture was taken. I think it's from 2 days ago. We also have the phrase neck and neck. You can see in this picture that Joe Biden has 49.8% of the vote and Trump has 48.6%. They're very, very close to each other. So we would say they are neck and neck. You can use this in any situation where there is a race where two people are so close to each other in the race that you aren't sure who's going to win the race. In a car race, you can say, oh, they're coming around the last corner, they're neck and neck. In a foot race, if you are running and you and another person are almost like you're right beside each other, we would say that you're neck and neck. It's kind of a funny phrase, neck and neck. And then we had this phrase a little earlier, too close to call. So you can see in this picture, each candidate has 49% of the vote, and they are still counting the votes. So sometimes when one candidate has a lot more votes than the other, the news reporters will call it. They'll say, well, it looks like this person's going to win. So even though they are still counting votes, they know mathematically they will win. But sometimes it's too close to call. So in this situation, if I was a reporter, I would say, we can't say who's going to win because it's too close to call. Sometimes things are just too close to call. Let me see here. When you win the election, you are then elected. Okay, so you are running for election. There is an election. And then once everyone votes, and if you are chosen, you are elected. In Canada, when you are elected, you usually have a big party to celebrate. Usually you celebrate with all of your supporters and you celebrate with all of the other people in your political party who have won. And usually that's fairly late in the evening in Canada. We do have to wait usually till 11 p.m. or even midnight to find out who has won our election. In this picture, you can see that Justin has been elected. Prime Minister Trudeau, or Justin Trudeau was elected, and he is the Prime Minister. Let's see here. We also have situations where there is a landslide. So we talked about neck and neck being really close. When you win by a landslide, it means you get almost you get a vast majority of the votes. In this image, I think this is from the UK, you can see the Conservatives won by a landslide. They got almost twice as many votes as the Labour Party. So generally in an election in Canada, we do not have people win by a landslide. Usually they win by a small or large margin. But if you win by a landslide, you definitely are just laughing at Madi, who's doing choose A or B, who you think's going to win the election. But yes, sometimes you win by a landslide. When you lose an election, if you are the person who has lost the election, you give a concession speech. Okay, so a concession speech is a speech that you give when you have lost an election. Generally, a concession speech comes along with that person admitting that they lost. It comes with that person saying that they worked hard and they tried their best. They usually thank everyone that helped them during their campaign. But a concession speech is given by the person who has lost the election. And then, of course, you have an acceptance speech. An acceptance speech is a speech given by the person who has won the election. It's a very similar speech. The only main difference would be a concession speech. The person says, we accept the loss. In an acceptance speech, they say they accept the win. And then usually they thank everyone who helped them during their campaign. They kind of talk about some of the things they're excited about doing as the new leader. But an acceptance speech is definitely something that you will hear at the end of an election when all of the votes have been counted. So in the case of the United States right now, people are waiting for all the votes to be counted, and then there will be an acceptance speech and there will be a concession speech. That might be a ways away because there may be some legal challenges in the United States. So we have to wait to see. But definitely at some point, someone will accept the fact that they have won and someone will concede that they have lost. Let's see here. Oh, I should check my audio. I haven't done that for a while. Looks like everything is good. So, hey folks, I'm going to spend the remainder of the time answering questions. I'm just going to double check to see how many questions I have left. I'm probably close to the end. Let's see here. Yes, looks like it. So I'm going to take the next few moments to answer the rest of your questions, and then that will be the end of the lesson. So here we go. Yacine, swing states. What does it mean? A swing state is a state where they aren't sure who that state will vote for. So sometimes it's easy. Sorry, I'm doing two things at once here. So usually in the United States and in other countries, they have an idea as to who will win, but sometimes they aren't sure. And so you call it a swing state, a battleground state. But it's like there were some states where they said the Democrats will most likely win or the Republicans will most likely win. But they knew going into the election, there were some states where half of the population supported Trump and half supported Biden. So we would call those swing states. Let me get to the next question. Haraz says, does Canada have a democracy or not? We are a democratic country. We have a form of democracy that's a little more, there's a little bit of there's a social aspect to our democracy in the fact that we have a lot of government programs to support people, like free healthcare. So definitely, yes, Canada is a democracy. Leo Bove says, hello, Bob. Thank you for your lessons. It is very useful. I'm very happy to hear that, Leo Bove. I do really enjoy doing these lessons. They are a lot of fun for me. I've not run out of topics, by the way. I have many, many more topics. So let's go to the next question. Koskun says, vote, poll, and ballot, are they the same? So again, when you vote, it's the action of actually indicating who you would like to have in the election. A poll is simply any time someone asks your opinion, okay? So an election is an official act. A poll is simply when people ask you. It's like a survey in some ways. And then a ballot, that's the actual piece of paper that you fill out. Here we go. Not on topic, but a great question. How can I learn English, please? You can learn English by watching my videos if you want, but don't just watch my videos. You should be listening to English music. You should be reading in English. You should be finding someone to speak English with. Just try to set aside time every day to practice your English. By the way, thank you so much to everyone who answered my questions in the survey. I think I have close to 700 people have responded. I will make a follow-up video and show you some graphs of how everyone answered. That will be coming out early next week. But thank you so much for watching my video from last week. If you didn't watch my video from last week, I'm going to put a link here for a sec. Yeah, thank you to everyone who watched and who filled out that form. That was awesome of you. Faruk says, hello, Teacher Bob. I hope you are good. I am. When you are choosing a candidate, are you using a pen or is there a stamp for yes in the election process? Thank you very much. So in Canada, we very much fill in a circle on a ballot. That ballot sometimes goes in a ballot box, but I didn't talk about this. Sometimes the ballot goes into a counting machine. Okay, but Canadian elections are always done on paper. They want to have a paper copy. They want to have a paper ballot, as well as a record digitally of what you did. So if they ever need to recount, that's something I forgot to talk about, didn't I? A recount. A recount is when they count all the votes again to make sure that it is correct. Let me see here. Let's see. Hyatt says, why did the administrators of this channel block me? In a comment, even though I did not do anything bad. This is injustice. There's not a lot of injustice on the Bob the Canadian channel. Sorry, Hayat. I'm not sure what you said, but I'm sure if you got blocked, By the way, sometimes it's Nightbot that blocks you as well. So don't get too worried. We don't try to be unjust or anything like that here. So sorry about that. Let me see here. Next question. Yeah, Brahim says, hi, Teacher Bob. We will remember for a while 214 versus 264. The process of counting votes will take a long time. An exercise of democracy needs the admittance of the results. I think we will. I think I woke up every morning this week seeing the same count for the US election. So interesting. We'll see. I think we'll remember this election for a long time. Kismo says, hi, Teacher Bob. Are there any penalties if you didn't go vote in Canada? No. It's totally a free and open election, including your whether you vote or not. You can decide not to vote. You don't have to go vote. I wonder if we should make people vote. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see here. Vicky says, hello, Bob. In my country, people always avoid talking about which political party and candidate they support. Is it the same in Canada? Thanks in advance. People in Canada are very reserved when it comes to politics. I usually do not talk about who I'm going to vote for or why. We're very private people. We don't often talk about who we're going to vote for. Sometimes we do, but it's rare. Let's see here. Mohammed, what is the best way to improve your English? I'm more of a listener. So listening is amazing. Like, just do as much listening as you can, Mohammed, but you do need to start writing, and you do need to start reading and speaking English as well. You need to do all four. It's very, very important that you do all four of those. Hey, I do want to say hello to the 653 people watching. If you're new here, there's a, what am I doing? I'm trying to point here. There's a red button here that says subscribe. You should click that. It's awesome when you do that. I like it when people subscribe. You will then get notified when I do a new English lesson. So we're a little off topic here, but Din has the last question. Hi, Bob. My question is, how can I improve the reading section in my IELTS exam? Thanks in advance. Make sure when you do reading practice, you are adding a layer to it. Make sure that you, so can we just kick Hyatt out? So if Hyatt Gasser is just getting annoyed and starting to swear, let's just boot him. That's fine with me. Anyways, Din says, how can I improve the reading section? Read more and make sure you test yourself on your reading. It's important that instead of just reading something, it's important not to just move on, but maybe make little quizzes or tests for it. Also, it's important to read things twice. It can be boring to read things twice, but yes, reading things twice can be helpful as well. Let me see here. There might be one more question. No, that's all the questions. So, hey, sorry that I got a little annoyed with someone in the chat. That happens sometimes. What I try to create here is as pleasant as an experience as possible for everyone. So hopefully you guys have experienced that. Hopefully you were able to learn just a little bit more English today. Hopefully you were able to learn a little bit about elections. Always kind of a fun process. I guess sometimes a bit of a crazy process. I still like Samuel's description of how it's kind of like a carnival. So yes, it's a little bit like a carnival sometimes when the elections are close. There was another US election years ago between Bush and Gore that was very close. And Canadians at that time also just patiently watched that election. Anyways, thank you so much for all of your questions. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for being so dedicated to learning English. That's just awesome of you. So I'm just going to say bye to everyone in the chat. Bye to all of you. Have a great day. Thanks to Dave and Todd again for moderating. And thanks to all of you for keeping the chat civil and polite as we had a lesson that was a little bit about politics. Anyways, have a great Friday. I know for some of you, it's already Friday evening. Have a great Friday. Again, no live stream tomorrow. Okay. Normally I do a live stream now. And normally I do one on Saturday. There is no live stream this weekend. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the break. And I will see you next Tuesday with a new video. By the way, Rod, the Brazilian English teacher, will have a video out tomorrow. You should go watch it. I think it will be good. Anyways, bye everybody. Have a good day. I'm going to click the stop button in a minute.